This is my review of Slime Diaries. Okay, so this episode marks the start of winter in the Tempest Federation, and the long story short, just everybody just kind of prepares for winter. And also, this episode serves as a recap of how Youm met Kaval and his party. So yeah, if you guys remember that, this episode basically more or less depicts how that actually happened, with some minor changes, but for the most part, it does kind of try and keep all the events true to what actually happened in the anime. But in any case, it starts off with winter kind of coming into the Tempest Federation, and Milim is actually just poking around the main building and notices a kotsatsu, which she doesn't fully understand the purpose of, as well as and also notices a bowl of oranges. And while she doesn't fully understand what it is, until and even swipes an orange, until she actually pokes her hand under the kotsatsu and discovers how warm it actually is under there. And then proceeds to down the entire bowl of oranges by herself and sleep under the kotsatsu. And Rimuru eventually comes in and notices this. And notices that she is curled up under the kotsatsu and doesn't say anything. But eventually Milim just kind of proclaims that it's a trap, as it were. And Rimuru is confused because there shouldn't be a trap. But in any case, with that, that's how the episode starts. But in any case, winter has started, and one of the first things Rimuru does upon the new season starting is he actually commissions a custom-made kimono to actually keep him warm throughout the winter seasons. He dons a special kimono that's designed to keep him warm, and he remarks that the reason he's doing that is to promote the idea that all the citizens of Tempest need to stay warm during the winter months, and remarks that he can't really show off that he's cold and shivering while everyone has to set an example for the rest of the nation. However, as Milim is quick to point out, apparently Rimuru this thought has never entered Rimuru's mind until now. Apparently, when he's in a slime form, he is in fact naked. So, and which causes Shion and Shuna to blush. And after going on his way to the guard outpost to do a fire safety meeting with the Goblin Riders, he quickly realizes that she's right. He just kind of is overcome with this weird, perverse pleasure in the fact that he's basically naked and nobody seems to care or notice. But eventually he snaps out of it and goes to the meeting he's supposed to go to, and the main purpose of the meeting is as follows. He wants to make sure that everybody is being safe during the warmer months and isn't, because, as he points out, because everything is getting warmer, everybody's going to have fires in their houses to actually stay warm, and points out that if not treated carefully, they could possibly burn their houses down by accident. And to that end, he has the Goblin Riders put on an anti-fire campaign, and also has Benimaru stand in as the mascot of the fire preparation campaign. Although as Benimaru later points out, once the campaign is in actual full swing, as he points out, he's not entirely comfortable with the idea because basically the poster for the campaign depicts him as a kind of an arsonist, and he's not exactly comfortable with that, and understandably why. But in any case, as Rimuru is doing a fire preparedness, after Rimuru goes and do the whole fire preparedness thing, he actually goes to check in with Vesta to make sure to see what he's actually up to. And as it turns out, Vesta is actually investigating the long-term effects of cold weather seasons on the Hapakata herbs that he has been harvesting and cultivating to make his potions. At which point Gabriel walks in and points out that there doesn't seem to be any sort of change. But Rimuru and Vesta are quick to note that Gabriel seems a little bit tired. And eventually Rimuru remembers that during the colder seasons, reptiles usually get tired and more sluggish, and start to go into hibernation, and then proceeds to wonder if the same is true for dragon newts. And while Gabiru tries to deny it, the fact of the matter is he is very sleepy. is kind of falling asleep on his feet. But as we find out later, when one of Gabiru's followers comes in, one of Gabiru's groupies comes in, and with yet another plan and yet another report. As it turns out, it actually varies by individual. So while Gabiru is kind of sleepy, his subordinate kind of isn't. He's just he is a little bit tired and worn down, but he's not to the extent that Gabiru is. But in any case, the cutaway does show Gabiru falling asleep at the end. So yeah, he is kind of worn down. But then it actually cuts to two bug monsters who we never met, a bee and a beetle, who are actually harvesting nectar for winter in the Great Treant Forest, and they're actually working very diligently because, as the two of them point out, if the flowers don't grow in winter, so they have to work quickly to actually harvest enough nectar for Rimuru to make more honey. But as they're doing that, Youm shows up and is basically just really terrifying to them. She shows up and the stag beetle looking bug monster actually tries to defend the honey from Youm, but gets knocked away. At which point she tries to coerce the bee into letting her have some honey. But Shion eventually steps in and stops her and tells her to go back to the house, which she does. At which point the two bug monsters lament on how scary that whole situation was, and yeah, Youm is definitely a little bit terrifying because when something gets in the way of Youm and her sweets, she kind of goes a little bit ballistic. But yeah, that's just funny that they're harvesting honey for winter, and Youm is just kind of trying to seduce him into giving her more honey. But in any case, back at the house, Shion is actually holding Rimuru, and Youm is kind of upset that Shion is holding Rimuru because she wants to hold Rimuru, and feels it's a little bit unfair that Shion basically holds him all the time. And though Rimuru is kind of a little bit confused by it, Shion actually explains that when you actually carry Rimuru, you're quite literally carrying the ideals that he embodies, and are quite literally carrying the entire nation. Which Rimuru is a little bit confused about, but Youm is still insistent that she gets to hold Rimuru, and so Shion decides to show her how to do it properly. Although, as it quickly becomes apparent, Youm it's a lot harder than it looks, and Youm's technique is very clumsy. I don't know how carrying someone can be clumsy, but yeah, Youm just gets frustrated and splats Rimuru on the floor. And while he mostly collects all of his slime parts and back into his main pile, he notes that some of himself is missing and wonders if Youm stole some. And while she denies it, it's clear that she did. But in the case, it then cuts to Eren, Garm, and again cuts to Kaval and his party, who are exploring the nation with Fuse to try and find the nation of monsters. And while they're and part of them is going there to actually mourn Shizu, who they lost in a previous episode. But this is kind of coinciding alongside the main anime, or at least the first season, I think. And while they are going to go mourn Shizu, they're more obsessed with going over and eating the fried meat that they had there, which Shizu was ultimately hurt by because she's there in spirit form and knows that they can't grieve forever, but is also a little bit hurt that she's not prioritized over meat and eating food. But in any case, Fuse asks them to snap out of it, and they continue to go on their merry way. But as they're going through the forest, they accidentally upset the night spider that they upset in their debut episode, and then proceed to be chased through the woods. And eventually, as they're going through, Youm and the Goblin Riders actually show up to save them, and the party then proceeds to prioritize eating an actual spider creature and turning it into a hot pot than they are actually fighting the monster and running for their lives. So yeah, Fuse gets a little bit annoyed with all of them. But in case, it then cuts to Youm bringing Rimuru to see Kirby. And as it turns out, not only does Youm actually remember Kirby's name, because as we've established, she doesn't really remember people's names unless she's really fond of them, like with Shuna. So she does remember Kirby's name, although he does remark that she pronounces it incorrectly. And as it turns out, Milim just kind of likes popping into Kirby's blacksmithing shop every now and again to see what he's making. And as it turns out, what he's currently making is a sword. And as he remarks, making a sword requires a lot of discipline and diligence. Otherwise, you can easily turn what should be a sword into scrap metal. But as he's making that speech, Milim sneezes, and it winds up working out because he winds up making a short sword, which Gapta then uses to kill the night spider in the previous scene. And Rimuru is just left wondering if Milim does indeed have a cold. But in any case, now that Youm and his friends have actually gathered in the city of Tempest, they then proceed to gather around and are waiting for, and are just kind of sitting around eating potato chips. And Trini isn't entirely sure how to take them because as she points out, it's finally happened where they've gotten into a situation where they're actually looking into humans and monsters interacting, and she's a little bit curious how they'll actually behave, and if they're actually good people. But after finding out that her new winter flavor of potato chips is just that popular among them, she concludes that they couldn't actually be bad people if they enjoyed the bounties of nature. And after concluding that her new flavor is that popular, she decides that she's going to eat one for herself. But Shuna actually snatches the bowl from her before she could, pointing out that they actually asked for seconds, and apologizes, but says that she's going to make another batch anyway, so it'll probably work out fine. At which point it then comes to Youm wandering around town, and he's remembering the proposal that Rimuru made him, which if you guys don't remember, is of Rimuru declaring Youm a champion so that it looks like he defeated the Orc Lord, and it makes it look like they're actual friends with humans, which isn't entirely a lie, that scene is basically recreated word for word inside of this anime. So yeah, it's just kind of summarizing that event from the main anime. And Youm is mulling it over in his head, pointing out that he initially thought of Rimuru as a bit of a joker, but clearly he's very dedicated to his work, and can tell that by how many people are actually idolizing him. Case in point, after finding out that he and Rimuru are friends, literally everybody in the city of Tempest tries to give him a free gift, and free food, and free everything else. And by the end of it, Youm is standing on a cliff covered in Rimuru memorabilia and eating Rimuru-shaped food. At which point Rimuru rolls up, but Rimuru rolls up to him, and Youm immediately declares that the citizens of Tempest really love Rimuru. But Rimuru points out that it's a little bit weird that they declare all of their affection through food-related things. But in any case, after Youm finally makes his decision about becoming a champion, Rimuru declares that Youm and his friends are actually going to be staying in Tempest for a while, and that they should make him comfortable as guests. And Shuna ultimately decides to commemorate the situation, pointing out that she's already prepared some food ahead of time and actually worked on that hot pot that was mentioned in the previous scene, and that it should be almost ready. And Youm is actually kind of impressed by that, pointing out that they're clearly a lot more human than they are monster, and that it feels like he's just among people, not necessarily monsters. But he walks out, sees the spread that Shuna is actually set up for them, and it concludes that they are indeed monsters because, as it turns out, the hot pot is just massive, and everything else is just really massive, and they just kind of cook the entire monster monster whole. So Youm, after seeing all that, concludes that they are indeed very much monsters, and Rimuru just tells Youm that he'll eventually get used to it. And then the final scene is of Rimuru realizing that because he's a slime, he doesn't need to breathe, and wonders if he can replicate the effect of making his breath white when it gets cold. And case in point, Great Sage eventually figures out that using his own temperature regulation, he can actually create steam to come out of his mouth, and he proceeds to do exactly that. He breathes a stream of steam and is proud of what he's done because as he points out, he figured out how to make his breath white during the winter months. Only for Gapta to completely derail all of that hard work, because as Gapta kind of implies, it's not that special, and he's a little bit surprised that Rimuru is as proud as he is of being able to do that, since everybody can do that, and wonders if Rimuru is feeling all right. At which point Rimuru decides to get his revenge by overclocking his ability to breathe steam, and just breathe steam all over Gapta and his friends, and with Shuna ultimately telling them to stop screwing around and continue working. So yeah, overall this episode is just about the arrival of winter, and it also depicts some of the major scenes from the main anime, namely that this is where Youm is actually introduced in this story, and this is ultimately how he formally becomes the champion. He ultimately meets with Rimuru in this episode. Rimuru defeats the Orc Lord and then declares that Youm is the one who actually defeated it. So yeah, we see that in this episode as a kind of a little allusion to what actually happens in the main anime, but for the most part it's just Rimuru and his friends kind of screwing around in the middle of winter trying to prepare for the colder months. So yeah, and also I didn't talk about this, but there's just this really cute scene of Shuna making a scarf for Rimuru as Benimaru is going to go train. And when he comes back, he finds little horn covers, which are meant to be for when he's sleeping, but he decides to wear them all the time because they're a gift from his sister, which is kind of cute, and I like it. So yeah, but in any case, without that, other than that scene, I just randomly remember that. But for the most part, but yeah, for the most part, it's just Rimuru and his friends screwing around during the winter seasons, and also trying to tie it back into the main anime, which works surprisingly well. It's basically a shot-for-shot remake of how Eren and her friends actually wound up meeting Rimuru. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny that they decided to just reconnect it to the main anime to remind you that yes, this may or may not be canon. This may or not be happening alongside the rest of the actual main anime. But yeah, in any case, that's my review of Slime Diaries. What did you guys think? Let's get a discussion going in the comment section down below, or over on my Discord server, link in the description. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Twitter to make sure you keep up to date with what's going on with the channel. I also post written reviews over there. I also post a bunch of memes and stuff over there, so if you guys want to go check those out, be sure to do that. Also, be sure to check out my Patreon. It's a great way to help support me because it's a crowdfunding thing. Go check that out if you want to help support me. I also list you on my website if you do that. I also write written reviews over there, so if you want to go check those out, by all means, go do that. And also be sure to check out my Twitch. I've been streaming regularly over there for the past month and a half now. We're actually going to be continuing with Miitopia because I am enjoying it and people are still coming to go watch it. So if you want to go see that, by all means, go ahead. I've also uploaded the VODs over here if you guys want to go see those. They're in their own playlist, so if you guys want to check that out, by all means. And also, if you want to see more content from me, then be sure to check out the videos linked in the end screen. The top video is the most recent video. It may or may not be this one. Whereas the bottom video is the video recommended to you based on what you've already seen from me. So, if you want to see more of what you like, or try something completely different, then be sure to check both of those videos out. But, regardless of whether or not you do any or all of those things, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!